Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
So we spent a lot of time over the last few days, weeks, months even, outlining how the GOP, from the federal to the state and now even at the county level here in Fulton County, Metro Atlanta, are looking to tilt the 2026 election results before the first vote for any office is even cast. For a little background first, let's go to the story from WAGA Fox 5 Television here in Atlanta.
If Fulton County Republicans have their way, Democratic members of the county commission will be fined or put in jail. The GOP has filed an emergency motion asking the judge to hold some of those commissioners in both civil and criminal contempt. And Good Day's Mark Teichner is live from the Fulton County Courthouse with more on this. And Mark, this all stems from a fight over the county's election board?
It certainly does, Ron. Basically, what's happened is the commissioners have been ordered by this judge to seat two Republican nominees, and so far the democratically controlled commission has refused to do so.
I personally will not vote to seat those two people, no.
It's a stance that could cost Fulton County Commissioner Dana Barrett her freedom. Barrett and other Democrats on the commission find themselves the target of an emergency motion filed by the Fulton GOP. Republicans want a judge to hold those commissioners in both civil and criminal contempt, asking for a $1,000 a day fine and up to 20 days in jail because the commission has refused to seat two GOP nominees to the county's election board, despite being ordered to do so by the judge.
We exercised our free will.
Democrats on the commission have balked at Republican nominees Julie Adams and Jason Frazier, claiming both have a history of challenging election results and ballots.
I'm not going to be changing my vote. So if the board is going to get these two people seated, they're going to have to find 4 votes that don't include me.
Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger blasted the Democrats on the commission, saying, quote, defiance of the rule of law may seem like good politics to some, but it's reckless. Court orders are not optional. They must be followed. Commissioner Barrett says she's ready for whatever punishment comes her way.
I have to vote my conscience, and I have to, vote to defend our elections.
In its motion, the GOP asked for the judge to grant a hearing as early as today. Now, we haven't been able to find one on the docket. If it does get added, we'll, of course, let you know right away.
And with me to discuss, while she still has the freedom to do so, is Fulton County Commissioner Dana Barrett. Dana, thanks for joining the show this morning. I appreciate that.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So let me try and clarify the story if I can a little bit, and maybe you can help me with this. This isn't just about seating any two members from the GOP on the Fulton election board. It's about these particular two nominees. Am I right?
Yeah, it's about these two particular nominees and our right as commissioners to, vote as elected officials and vote our conscience. And, we interpret the law of shall appoint as differently. The judge focused on the word shall. We focused on what shall applies to, which is, in our minds from a list of nominees, not any nominee they put up. I mean, am I going to appoint a murderer?
Valid question. And while an election denier isn't a murderer, it's a pretty important label for someone who would be put up for nomination for an election board seat, especially in Fulton County, which has been at the center of so many conspiracy theories, most, if not all of them, debunked. We've had election employees, of course, targeted for harassment. They, of course, won lawsuits. So this is an important step, and you guys are drawing the line. Even facing threat of being jailed and fined. How alarming is? I mean, I feel like we've been sitting in this pot like a bunch of frogs, and the water gets warmer and warmer. But it's boiling.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's very alarming that this is where they would go. That instead of just replacing their nominees with different nominees, they would rather put us in jail. And I mean, for us, that's the most basic remedy. That's what happened when they nominated Jason Frazier the first time. We rejected him, and they ultimately just gave us another nominee who we appointed. I think we are all in good faith willing to nominate any nominee that, well, let me rephrase that. We're willing to appoint nominees from their nominations, but not any nominations. And these two are not qualified.
So I also have to say this. I don't feel as if the media that's covering this story is actually pointing out this very particular part of the conversation. It's not just about appointing Republicans to the election board. It's about these two particular Republicans and their qualifications.
Yeah, very much. I mean, these two have both been covered extensively in the news locally and nationally. I mean, their list of sort of election denying connections and actions is undeniable. They're proud of it, actually. So, I think it's a long and complicated story, and the media is always trying to do kind of a quick soundbite. But I think we have to focus on who these people are and why the Republicans are so insistent on putting them on this board.
Yeah, especially when you couple it with what has wound up being on the state election board at the same time, and the 11th hour, machinations they tried to push through before the 2024 election. And then you couple that with the changes that were then made after the election by that board, and now the opportunities that exist for ne'er-do-wells, nefarious intent, MAGA supplicants put on the Fulton election board. And again, here we are heading into a 2026 midterm where we've got the Georgia Secretary of State purging voters, some who don't even know that it's happening. And we live in some pretty scary times. I keep marveling at how we are where we are right now. And it's hard to get up every day and just go about your business without stopping to think, my God, y'all, we are slow walking into this fascistic scenario where you could be jailed just for voting on a board that you are elected to vote on.
Yeah, I was saying to somebody last night, I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be risking jail by speaking words and pushing a button.
Yeah. So give me a little background for those who don't know. How is it that someone can be nominated for the election board, and how these folks wind up in front of you? I mean, are we just down to the two? Are these the only two Republicans that they are giving the Fulton County Commission the opportunity to vote in?
Yeah, so the way it works is, and it's different in every county, but the way it works and the rules in Fulton are that the Fulton County Republican Party nominates two people. The Democratic Party of Fulton nominates two people, and then the Board of Commissioners nominates and appoints the chair. And for for the four party nominees, they nominate, we appoint. So, there's no specific language around how many they can nominate. We will only appoint two, but there's no specific language saying that they, must nominate only two, or that we must, pick from those two. The language is, vague, as law is in a lot of cases. And so, up until this whole sort of, as you described it, sort of move towards, I don't even remember what word you used, but autocracy or a dictatorship or whatever it is. Up until then, it was done in good faith by both parties, but that has not happened now. So, so that puts us in a challenging position. And I think it's really interesting that they're holding us. They're accountable to, quote unquote, the rule of law when they are flying in the face of the rule of law all over the country in every arena.
Oh my God, yeah, the gerrymandering fight is, I've been saying this for weeks now, this could devolve into a gerrymanderish version of a civil war in state legislatures where states are just matching states with their tactics. And the only people losing are the people, like the voters.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally.
So maybe you don't know this, but I'm curious how Fulton County arrived at a situation where a county that is so overwhelmingly partisan, voting, en masse with one party for the most part for, I don't know, the last 50, 60 years, winds up with a split election board with a chair that can break a tie. I think it's actually rather nice that Fulton County does that for Republicans. But how did the Fulton County Election Board arrive at that sort of ratio?
Well, I mean, this is a deeper story, right, about how little people know about the local officials that they're electing. And the reality is that, Chairman Pitts, who's been on the Fulton County Commission for decades, and runs as a Democrat, has never voted like a Democrat. Everybody sort of in the political circles in the Atlanta area knows that. So it really has been a Republican board unofficially for a long time. And it's one of the things that, has been most frustrating for me. I actually took the seat of a Republican incumbent and really thought that would secure a 4 Democrat vote without Chairman Pitts. But, he's a politician and he was able to sway Commissioner Abdu-Rahman to join his foursome. So the 2 Republicans and Commissioner Abdu-Rahman and Chairman Pitts have been the voting bloc. So they're ostensibly and for all intents and purposes voting Republican pretty much on everything. And they, periodically switch their vote over and vote for something Democrat here or there when they can't get away with not. And that's what's been happening. And so it's been incredibly frustrating because these stories don't bubble up in the news for folks.
Yeah, it's rather difficult to get anyone's attention to talk about anything city or municipal or county. County politics just are not sexy unless yeah, I mean they're just not. And in Fulton County, I feel like it gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, as you mentioned. The Rob Pitts creating an imbalance again in a county like Fulton that votes overwhelmingly Democratic. You would think that the commission would reflect that.
And that is such an important county in these types of issues for elections in particular, being the biggest county in the state and being heavily Democratic. I mean, these are votes we need, and we need them to be counted, and we need to make sure that every citizen in this county who is entitled to vote can vote.
So what's next? Do you guys have a commission attorney that are weighing in with opinions or advice, or are you personal? How is this working for you right now with the specter of being fined and or jailed?
I mean, I think the latest update is that the judge is doing a murder case and doesn't want to hold a hearing right now. So he's asked he's busy with other things.
Priorities.
Can't be bothered, Yeah, exactly. But so he's asked the attorneys to go back to the table today to meet and try to come to an agreement. Now, I don't see what possible agreement they can come to, but our county attorney will go, have the negotiation in good faith. And, I think we'll probably end up in somewhat of a stalemate following that, but we shall see. And, I think myself and Commissioner Ivory, because we were the 2 that sort of spoke out, are both looking at potentially having, a legal representation of our own just in case we need it. And I think things are going to continue to unravel pretty quickly. Yeah,
this is for me an opportunity where we're going to, if we are sitting at this stalemate, where it needs to be pointed out. Again, this is not about just appointing Republicans to the state election board. It's about appointing these 2 Republicans versus someone who would be qualified to fill those seats that the Republican Party could nominate. I mean, it's not like there's a shortage of Republicans they could nominate.
Exactly. And if they were to put up somebody who did not have this kind of an election denial record, we'd be happy to appoint them.
Well, and listen, if those 2 nominees want to be appointed to something, I'm sure there's something at the federal level that they could be, wholly underqualified for and still somehow get appointed to and rubber stamped through the Senate if they'd like. So, their options don't just stop at the Fulton County level.
You got that right, for sure.
Right. Dana Barrett, best of luck to you. We'll keep our eyes on this story, of course. Thank you so much for joining the Ron Show and gleaning some information to us.
Thank you so much.
Now, not wholly unrelated, there's also the state voter purge that is occurring right now and disproportionately affecting voters of color. Fulton County, a majority-minority county, by the way, so it also is a Fulton County and Georgia story. We'll discuss with Max Pflugerth from Fair Fight Action when the Ron Show returns on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn, or wherever you podcast. You can follow The Ron Show on your preferred social media platforms at Ron Show ATL. RonShowATL.com, by the way, also the website where we post a daily blog from each episode. We provide show notes so you get all of the stories. I'm going to include this from Chauncey Alcorn, writing for Capital B Atlanta, where he writes that these mass registration cancellation efforts being prompted by Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger puts black Georgians' voting rights at risk in a disproportionate manner. Shares the story of Alfreda Monroe, who says she hasn't been inspired to vote for anyone since 2008 when Barack Obama ran for president the first time. But she doesn't think choosing not to vote justifies having her vote registration canceled. This retired grandmother of 6 who lives with her husband in Hinesville was one of an estimated 478,000 inactive voters due to have their registration canceled soon for declining to cast ballots in multiple election cycles over the last 5+ years. State records show that Monroe's name was added to Georgia's latest mass voter registration cancellation list due to return mail that was sent to her old address. She said she never received a notice about her voter registration being canceled. On Monday, she said she visited a local Board of Elections office in Liberty County to re-register after someone from the voting rights group Fair Fight called and told her she was about to be removed from the rolls. She said, "Voting is my right, plain and simple. If I choose not to vote that year, then I choose not to vote. I should have that option." Alcorn continues, the office of Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger said it has sent notices to nearly 500,000 Georgians like Monroe since July 10th, informing them their voter registration is due to be canceled in accordance with the state's voter list maintenance policies for inactive voters. Those who didn't respond to the notices by mail or update their registration information online or in person will have their voter registrations canceled in the near future. Fair Fight says many individuals due to have their registrations canceled are folks like Monroe who are legally eligible to vote in Georgia. Some choose not to vote in recent election cycles. Others have changed addresses but still reside in the state. Black Georgians, Alcorn writes, appear to be overrepresented among the list of individuals who fit this criteria. Non-Hispanic black people make up 31% of registered voters in Georgia, but made up more than 44% when people who voted in other states in 2022 and 2024 were removed from the overall count, according to a Fair Fight analysis conducted in July. Only about 35% of people on the cancellation list were white under the same conditions, according to Fair Fight, despite white voters making up roughly 50% of the state's registered voters. Monroe was one of at least 180,000 likely Georgia voters on the cancellation list who Fair Fight has contacted via text message, phone bank, or robocall since July 10th. Fair Fight Voter Protection Director Janetta Curitin said black voters appear to be disproportionately impacted, saying, "There's definitely a disparity there. Voters need to understand that their vote is valuable, and if it wasn't, state election officials wouldn't be trying to manage things in this way." Now, Alcorn does point out that Gabriel Sterling recently went on Atlanta radio station V103 to use the platform to tell people to go to the My Voter page to update their information before August 20th, which, of course, was earlier this week, to ensure their voter registration isn't canceled. At that point, you'll have had a new contact with us, and you'll get moved back to active status, Sterling said in the clip. That way, you will remain on Georgia's voter registration rolls. By the way, Gabe Sterling's leaving this role. He's heading for a private sector job here very soon. It's curious timing, I guess, in the situation where one wonders what Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is going to be doing with his political future. What will he potentially be running for? What is he setting himself up to run for in 2026? Back to Alcorn's writing, however, on the voter purge. State election officials have said previously that moving away, dying, committing a felony, or choosing not to vote for more than 5 years in 2 general election cycles are reasons an individual voter registration may be classified as inactive and canceled. No active voters are being hindered in any way by this mailing. And any voter that is impacted has multiple options to make sure they can remain in active status, a Secretary of State spokesperson told Capital B Atlanta last month. To which Alcorn provides another example. Stonecrest resident Cordell Williams, who said he was disheartened to learn his voter registration was deemed inactive. 45-year-old insurance sales contractor said 2020 was the last time he voted. That's just barely 5 years ago. He said he never received a notice about his registration being canceled, but learned about it on Sunday when he received a call from, again, Fair Fight. Y'all have done more as far as contacting me than state election officials have done as far as a mailing system, Williams told Capital B on Tuesday. As long as I pay taxes and I get up and I work every day, and when I do not vote, shouldn't be a determination whether I can be a citizen of Georgia or not. That's my right. But I'm here to tell you, and we're going to have Max Flugroth on from Fair Fight in just a few minutes, by the way. They are an organization that, still remains a fly in the ointment for voter suppression efforts by conservatives. And they're, of course, facing relentless attack in this era and are going to need those of us who are like-minded to rally to support them as best we can. So we'll talk a little bit about that because I think it's important to talk about these grassroots organizations that are still, just hanging on by a thread to fight for fair voting practices and a fair voting environment in states, not just like Georgia, but throughout the country. I mean, think about the overall tableau here. You're not just dealing with the Fulton County Election Board looking to have 2 election deniers seated on its board. We also have election deniers seated on the state election board, and we'll have Marilyn Marks on next week from the Coalition for Good Governance to talk a little bit about that. But you talk about the county situation here in Fulton County, Atlanta. You talk about the state situation, and then you look at what's happening in state houses right now, where state legislatures, at the behest of the President of the United States, are looking to disenfranchise voters of color even more by gerrymandering even further than they already do since the evisceration of voting rights acts in the last decade or two, to make it so that voters of color have less of a say who represents them at the county level, at the state level, and of course at the federal level. Anyway, we're going to chat with Max Pflugerith and do an entire flyover about all of these stories. They're all very much important. In a non-election year where folks aren't paying attention, we have to stay vigilant, and so we are. It's The Ron Show, America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
So, as I've said before and have for a few weeks now, we're heading into some really dark times. And I know a lot of Democrats, I would say those who are just mildly paying attention, or maybe not even paying attention, but just sort of filed away that, okay, 2024 didn't go the way we want, we'll just deal with this in 2026, who may not be paying attention to the fact that 2026 is already being set up as a rigged game board. You can't start playing Monopoly when somebody else has all the houses on their side and has all the cash. When the bank doesn't give you your allotment and your fair opportunity to start from jump at the same spot, then obviously the game is already rigged. And that is seemingly what is happening at the federal, at the state, and at the county level in Fulton County, Georgia. Here to talk about all of this is Max Pflugerith, Fair Fight Action, who, by the way, gosh, listen, since 2024 and even before then, you guys have been under relentless attack. Anything with Stacey Abrams' fingerprints on it has been under relentless attack. And let's do this right now. Let's insist that anybody listening who is fair-minded and like-minded and wants free and fair elections, they need to support Fair Fight Action. How can they do that?
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate you having me on. Anyone that wants to get into the fight to protect independent and fair elections can go to fairfight.com. Check us out. You know, we got ways to contribute, we got ways to volunteer, and we generally have ways to keep up and get involved.
And keeping up is the hard part because we're sipping from a fire hose with all these stories. We've been paying so much attention to the Texas gerrymandering story and the California response and the other states that might be responding to that. And those are important stories, don't get me wrong. But we're seeing this effort. I mean, it is a multi-pronged and far-reaching effort to seat election deniers at county election boards, at state election boards. Obviously, we have that in the state of Georgia as well. But we're also seeing disenfranchisement of voters. The SAVE Act, the president's executive order insisting that states go through and purge their voter rolls. Well, Georgia's been ahead of that. For all of the bluster about how Brad Raffensperger stood up to Donald Trump, Brad Raffensperger has been in a position to do what Donald Trump wants him to do now and has been doing it long before Donald Trump was even in office.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this voter purge fits into a national strategy. You know, they're removing almost 500,000 Georgians from the rolls, and they're doing it quickly, right? And initially, what they said was that they were highly confident. I believe the quote that Gabriel Sterling gave to the AJC about this list was, he said, he's nearly 100% confident voters on the cancellation list have either moved and are no longer eligible to vote at their prior addresses. So, Fair Fight did an analysis. We looked at this list. We took everyone on this list that we found had voted in another state in 2022 or 2024. That gave us a likely estimate of who actually moved out of state. Then we subtracted those voters from the list. Then when we looked back at the list, what was left on it, we saw that the list was disproportionately Black. So we reached out to a reporter. We discussed it with him. He shared the information with the Secretary of State's office, asked them a couple questions about it. They refused to answer any specific questions about our analysis. All they did was attack it and misrepresent it. And then, interestingly enough, they changed their tune. They quietly went on Black radio. They sent Gabriel Sterling, the chief operating officer, and he recorded a little PSA, telling people to check their voter registration before it's too late. So, why the departure? Why the change? If no eligible voters were at risk, why do you have to do a PSA all of a sudden? and especially why on black radio.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the tell, right? That's the canary in the coal mine. They're tipping their hand. How is it that you guys are able to do this analysis, but the state elections office can't do that?
I don't know if it's a matter of can or can't, right? So we have a dedicated small team who work hard and we're passionate about protecting voters' rights every day. And we try to look at the data in the most effective way possible. And, we sent the information over, it was shared, and they chose not to respond to it really in any substantive way other than misrepresenting it and attacking it. So I don't think it's a matter of can and can't. I think it's a matter of want.
Yeah, desire, exactly. There doesn't seem to be any desire to do that. I just, and you guys set up, in fact, I tested it for myself. You guys set up on your site the ability for folks to check their voter status. But let's talk a little bit about how, like, the evisceration of the Voting Rights Act over the years has led us to this point where, again, states like Texas can gerrymander themselves into an oblivion and disproportionately disenfranchise voters of color again, by the way, and that, these state elections offices can purge voter rolls even when it's blatantly obvious that they are disproportionately affecting voters of color and get away with it. I mean, there are no more police at the watch. There's no more watchmen at the guard tower anymore when it comes to protecting minority voter rights.
Yeah, I mean, look, it all tracks back to the same network that brought you the authoritarian Project 2025, is the same network that brought you the hyper-conservative Supreme Court, right, who appears to have, no want, no desire to actually uphold the Constitution. They seem to be, acting in terms of political purposes. But, from 2011 with the Shelby County v. Holder decision to the Brnovich decision in 2021, we've seen a steady stream of manufactured cases that were designed to travel from specific legal circuits up to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court could rule a certain way and weaken the Voting Rights Act. So piece by piece, it's been gutted. And Brnovich in 2021 is extremely important because what it did was it weakened the ability of states to stop discriminatory voting laws. Actually, Georgia's SB 202 passed right after the 2020 election. I don't know if you recall, but Brian Kemp, when he was running for re-election, got up on stage in a primary debate and said that, he was frustrated that Democrats won in 2020, and he did something about it with SB 202. Yeah. So he made it very clear. Shortly after that, AJC had a story. They had an analysis showing that SB 202 did, in fact, impact black voters more than any other group of voters in the state of Georgia. And what did Brad Raffensperger say when he was asked after the Brnovich decision? He said Brnovich vindicated them for SB 202. So, the intention here is clear. It's brought to you all by the same group of bad actors. And their goal is pretty certain. They don't want people who are less likely to vote for Republicans to have an easy time being able to vote.
The thing that kills me about all of this is that it seems like it's a lot of work on their part to disenfranchise voters, to, twist their elbow as far as it can go before snapping, to do all of this stuff instead of, I don't know, listening to minority voters and trying to, appeal to them. Just an idea. Just thought, maybe that would seem easier, but it just does not seem to be the case. But we're seeing some in the margins anyway, where voters of color, there are voters of color who migrated a little bit toward the center and some to the right in the last election cycle. And there is, I'm sure you've seen this too. There is this general malaise within voters of color who are like, you know what, this is none of my business. I'm sitting this one out. But they're the ones actively being targeted right now. So in your outreach, in your organization's outreach, when you're talking to voters who have been impacted, is the anger palpable, or is it just more of the same ho-hum? This is what we've become used to in the state.
Well, I think it depends on everyone's personal experience, right? But when we are reaching out to these folks, like we have been, the folks in the cancellation list, a lot of them don't even know they're being purged, and they are upset when they're told. Yeah. One gentleman who spoke to Capital B for the story on this, he basically said, I get up, I go to work, I pay my taxes. Yeah. Why, if I don't choose to vote, why should I lose my right to vote?
Yeah, it seems like an undue scenario where someone then has to go back through the process of registering to vote, and I mean,
and keep in mind, like you mentioned the SAVE Act earlier, right? So let's say you purge 500,000 voters from the rolls, right? The SAVE Act, then let's say it's passed. What the SAVE Act does is it buries people in new mountains of government red tape to be able to go register to vote. So instead of being able to register to vote online, by the mail, maybe with a third party group that's going around doing voter registrations at events and things like that, they have to go to a specific government office, and they have to go in person, and they have to show specific, often expensive government documents in order to register to vote. Not every community is the same, but there are rural communities out there in places like Arizona, Colorado, that, that could be up to an 8-hour round trip for people. So, it's not as blatant, it's not as violent as the voter suppression of Jim Crow, but it uses administrative processes, it uses rules to just make things more and more and more difficult, so that, with all the stuff we all got going on in our lives, we say, I couldn't make it to vote this time, it was just too much, I'll get it next time. But there may not be a next time at the rate that we're going.
Well, and when you're not allowed in many states to have same-day voter registration, someone who, surprise, finds out they're not registered to vote on or just shy of election day, then is sort of screwed. And they can't even, I mean, I guess they could cast a provisional ballot, but if they're not legally registered, that provisional ballot's going to get thrown out.
And they've already clamped down on provisional ballots as well. One thing that SB 202 did was it banned out of precinct provisional ballots. So on election day, if you didn't realize, you need to be at the right precinct to go vote, maybe, an early vote, you can vote at any location in your county. But when it comes to actual election day, you have to go to your specific voting location. If you don't realize that, you show up, you used to be able to cast a provisional ballot. Now that's not the case anymore with SB 202.
And in 2025, that just blows my mind. I mean, first of all, Patricia Murphy wrote a really good op-ed a few days ago about, being able to, at some point in our lives, we would hope, being able to use your mobile device to vote. But, I mean, at least if you're in the right county, even in the wrong precinct, if you're in the right county, because they change these locations so frequently and with little notice, if any, and, we're talking the U.S. Postal Service in its current form, as debilitated as it is, that not being the reliable source for, sending information in 2025, it's just disingenuous. I just find this all so disingenuous. But I also find it to be, it's part of the DNA. I think that's done on purpose.
I think you're spot on. And yeah, there's a lot of postal mail delivery issues here. And a lot of that is also the basis for Brad Raffensperger's 500,000 voter purge list. A lot of it is based on what's referred to as the NCOA, which is the National Change of Address Database. It's the same database that some of these like far-right election denier activists use for their data for their like mass voter challenges. But even the USPS, who maintains the database, has a disclaimer saying that they cannot guarantee its accuracy. We did an analysis and we found that there are a lot of flaws with this data. It is not reliable, but still it's held up as a gold standard, not only by election officials, but by far-right activists.
Well, and let's also bring in, like, this isn't just a voters of color scenario or issue. This is hyper-targeting women as well. I mean, there has been an effort to disenfranchise women voters over the last few years. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, most recently, I think what people will remember on this is the SAVE Act and, how it could impact married women who have changed their names. Basically what happens is the government documents, it requires the specific expensive documents. They have to have the name matching your current name. So if you're a woman, you got married, you changed your name, but maybe you didn't update your certified birth certificate or your passport yet, you're out of luck. And funnily enough, Republicans had a chance to address this issue when it was on the floor of the U.S. House. So it passed the House back in April. And when it was on the floor, Democrats offered amendments to try to mitigate the issue, and Republicans voted them all down. So, any even attempts at coming at this from a good faith angle, I believe right there are out the window.
Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene has had this streak lately where she doesn't feel like the Republican Party represents her anymore. And she's, in the process, I believe, of going through a divorce herself. Maybe this is one of those scenarios, because I think this doesn't just affect women who marry, but women who divorce as well. If their name happens to change or they drop the surname of their spouse, that they then find themselves, in the crowd. Maybe we can win over a Marjorie Taylor Greene by sharing this story with her. I don't know.
I have no insight into her personal business, but I don't think we can at all characterize Marjorie Taylor Greene and the modern Republican Party as being separate. They are very in line on 99% of policy objectives.
No, 1,000%. I just find it illuminating in some respects that MTG feels like she's on the outside looking in with the Republican Party. That she's one of the sharks swimming in their own pond. Anyway, Max Pfluger, Fair Fight Action, man. Thanks for keeping this up, man. You guys are really busting your chops, and again, under some scrupulous circumstances, and this is just not the era that it's easy to do what you do. It's not easy to do what you guys do in any era, but in this era where discord or disconnect with the Trump administration or the Republican Party lands you in court as often as it does. What Fair Fight Action is still doing and outreaching to hundreds of thousands of people to ensure that they know that their right to vote is under attack. I tip my hat again. We'll send them to your website at fairfightaction.com and insist that they check their own voter reg status, and if they can, to pitch in and help Fair Fight to do what the Georgia Secretary of State's office apparently isn't doing, which is just their homework. Max, thank you so much for joining the Ron Show today.
Thanks, Ron. Always appreciate it.
All right, got one more segment, and it even needs to be said, Ron DeSantis is a vile human being, scum of the earth, and what he and Florida Republicans and their State Department of Transportation have done to a memorial. I mean, just a fucking crosswalk, for God's sakes, to memorialize the slain victims of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando is disgusting. We'll get to that story next. It's The Ron Show on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn and wherever you podcast. All right, final few minutes of today's Ron Show, and we've said for as long as the Trump era has existed in American politics, often the cruelty is the point. How else can you explain Trump Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, insisting that murals that honor the LGBTQI+, Black Lives Matter, et cetera, and so on, have to be done away with? This story from WESH in Orlando, Florida.
Tonight, the crosswalk outside of Pulse is dripping in color, but it's rain-washed chalk, not the painted rainbow that's been on the road since 2017.
Volunteers drew the colors back on after the sudden repainting by the state overnight sparked outrage. West 2's Stuart Moore reports on the growing back and forth.
The Pulse nightclub site has been a place where tears have been shed and hugs shared ever since the June 2016 night when 49 lives were taken. And while the official memorial is still years away, this place, this ground, has been a gathering site to remember the victims of Orlando's worst mass shooting.
This was ridiculous. We did everything according to plan. That's why we weren't even concerned, because we had done everything FDOT asked. We did it according to FDOT rules. They've actually made some of these crosswalks less safe.
Commissioner Patty Sheehan is one of many outraged by the Florida Department of Transportation painting over the rainbow and making the crosswalk leading up to Pulse the same as every other crosswalk.
They know what this means to our community. You know, considering what happened here, this is where you go to first. I want to ask the average voter in Florida, is this making your insurance go down any?
Right.
Is this bringing your utility rates down any? He just wants you to think that you're winning somehow because you're attacking gay people, as he does nothing to actually help you.
That's the point.
It's time for it to end, folks.
Governor Ron DeSantis posted on X saying, quote, "We will not allow our state roads to be commandeered for political purposes." But those who gathered at Pulse to protest the painting say this is making this location political because they didn't see the rainbow as politics, but as a place to remember the 49. In the hot sun, supporters get on their hands and knees and chalk the roadway, bringing back what was the rainbow crossing to Pulse. But afternoon storms washed it all away. Supporters emphasize the fight is not over.
I want people to know that the LGBTQ community will not be erased. It's not happening. You can try to erase different things in our community, but we'll just come back bigger and stronger.
And Commissioner Sheehan says the city is considering all options, including filing a lawsuit. She stresses the city did all the right steps so the rainbow crosswalk to Pulse could stay.
What kills me is, first of all, rainbow crosswalks, multicolored crosswalks. I mean, university campuses do multicolored crosswalks for their athletic team's colors. There's no issue with that. There's no safety problem with that. There's no evidence whatsoever that multicolored or painted colored crosswalks imperil pedestrians in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And street art is it's just a freedom of expression. This is a First Amendment right. I mean, this is this just blows my mind. Incidentally, Florida is also one of those states that has more than 100 specialty license plates that lets drivers in the state show off their favorite causes, political or otherwise, universities, sports teams, theme parks. They're choosing to be anti-abortion, you name it. There are hundreds of options for drivers to express their views, political, sociological, societal, or otherwise, through a license plate that they get from the state of Florida. I mean, if we're going to talk uniformity here, wouldn't that be one that you would want to have uniform, since that is a state-sanctioned plate, literally a license plate from the state on a vehicle? Again, though, this is more about the cruelty being the point. This is literally the location where 49 people were slaughtered in a mass shooting. Republicans don't like to even talk about the mass shooting stuff, right? Thoughts and prayers, that's all you get. And even then, it's a gay nightclub, so I'm sure the thoughts and the prayers were rather suppressed or held back in some circles in MAGA culture. But this particular location in and of itself is important, and it's like that guy said. Really, all the other things that Florida's dealing with right now, and this was a priority. This had to be done. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, at the federal level here, you've got planes falling out of the sky. You've got planes and helicopters colliding, if not near missing. You've got planes near missing each other on the tarmac. And it's rainbow crosswalks that are your high priority right now. Again, when there's no empirical evidence that street art, that mural art of any kind on the streets is causing any sort of harm to anyone. This is, again, a suppression of their right to free speech. Now, personally, what I love is that, again, organizers went out there with red and orange and yellow, green, blue, purple. They went out there with chalk. It's not permanent, but they went out there with chalk, and they decided it's not permanent, but we're going to bring those colors back. I mean, that's empowering. It also shows that, there's a flicker of resistance still in our hearts and still in our souls, and that the lives that were lost on that night still matter. The tribute to the lives lost that night still important to the Orlando LGBTQIA plus community and the elected officials, the city commission that, as you heard that commissioner say, they abided by all of Florida Department of Transportation's rules and policies to have that crosswalk put in place in the first place. I mean, if you're gonna enact some sort of law after the fact, I mean, why would you not grandfather this one in? It's again, it just comes back to what I think is a MAGA edict. If it ain't white, if it ain't male, it ain't straight. The cruelty is the point. They have to be made to heal. That just seems to be the mantra, the MAGA mantra. It's gross, it's disgusting, and my God, if we're given the opportunity in 2026 and in 2028 without rigged elections and gerrymandering and voter purges, man, I hope there are enough of us who are going to say, this is not what any of us voted for. Even some on the right, you would hope, have some compassion. I mean, dare I have hope for even humanity on the right for this? I don't know. It's going to do it for today's Ron Show. Thank you so much for listening. We air weekdays, 9 a.m., 5 p.m. on America One Radio. 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Weekend shows, Saturdays and Sundays, 10 a.m. on Progressive Voices as well. Show notes, as always, at RonShowATL.com. Have yourselves a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.